It wasn't the kind of moment you planned for, but it ended up defining everything. One laugh. That's all it took. Jamie Kern Lima didn't yell, didn't clap back, didn't post a lengthy Notes app statement. She just laughed. And somehow, that one little sound did more damage to Meghan Markle's carefully polished persona than 100 headlines ever could. It wasn't cruel, it wasn't loud, but it landed with the weight of someone who's seen the game played one too many times and isn't impressed anymore. Let's rewind for a second. Meghan Markle had just appeared on Jamie's podcast, her first ever podcast appearance that wasn't on her own terms. No production crew in her pocket, no pre-approved talking points, just two women, two mics, and a conversation that veered into the unexpected. When Meghan tried to throw a subtle jab, calling Jamie a user and a hypocrite, the room didn't tense up. Jamie didn't even blink. She just smirked. And then came that laugh. Dry, effortless, and loaded. The kind of laugh that makes people sit up because it says more than words ever could. And here's why that laugh mattered. Jamie Kern Lima is not someone who needs clout from Meghan Markle. This is a woman who built a billion-dollar company with her bare hands. She didn't marry into royalty. She didn't inherit fame. She wasn't born into it. She earned every inch of her spotlight. You want real? Jamie once wiped off her full face of makeup on live television to show women what real skin looks like. Redness, rosacea, texture. No filters, no edits. Just raw truth. And that truth sold for over $1 billion when she handed the reins of IT Cosmetics to L'Oreal in 2016. No pity press tour required. So when Meghan tried to label her a hypocrite, you could practically hear the collective eye roll of every woman who's followed Jamie's journey. It wasn't just a petty insult. It was laughably off base. Meghan's brand, let's be honest, has become a cocktail of curated sadness and passive-aggressive empowerment. She talks about truth, but always with a soft filter and a sob story. Everything is a struggle. Every criticism is misogyny. Every fallout is somebody else's fault. But Jamie, she doesn't sell victimhood. She sells resilience. She mentors women without needing to post about it. She invests in people without turning it into a marketing campaign. And she shows up not for applause, but because she means it. That's what made Meghan's comments so bizarre. It was like watching someone try to throw shade at the sun. There's no point. And here's the kicker. Jamie didn't even need to defend herself. Her entire life is the defense. Thousands of rejections. A dream people laughed at. A company no one wanted to fund. But she kept showing up, pitching, working, believing, and now she sits at the top with zero drama, zero scandals, and a legacy built on grit, not gossip. Meanwhile, Meghan's circle keeps shrinking. First, it was the royal family, then Spotify, then Netflix. And now, even the industry that once welcomed her with open arms is starting to keep its distance. People aren't saying it out loud, but they're definitely thinking it. She's exhausting. Not because she's outspoken, not because she's emotional, but because it always feels like she's performing empowerment instead of living it. And that's what made Jamie's laugh so powerful. It wasn't dismissing Meghan's pain, it was rejecting the performance. Empowerment isn't a storyline. It's not a brand, it's a life you live. And Jamie's been living it long before Meghan Markle ever learned how to curate hers for the camera. There's a reason Jamie's reaction hit so hard. It exposed a deeper shift happening behind the scenes. The curtain's been lifting on the Meghan Markle brand for a while now. People aren't buying what she's selling like they used to. And it's not because her story isn't compelling. It's because the delivery has started to feel like a loop. Empowerment, injustice, victimhood, repeat. At first, it was disruptive. Now it feels like noise, and Hollywood doesn't like noise unless it's profitable. Lately, the Sussex narrative has been anything but. Executives aren't vibing with the endless delays, the creative chaos, the conflicting press stories. Projects stall. Deals lose steam. People show up to meetings already tired. Not because they don't respect the platform Meghan and Harry built, but because it keeps falling short of what it promises to be. It's not bold anymore. It's unpredictable. And unpredictable in Hollywood means risky. Jamie Kern Lima isn't in that orbit. She's the opposite. Clean, consistent, unshakable. She doesn't need to weaponize her past or package her pain into Netflix content. Her credibility comes from what she's built, unfamiliarity, not what she's survived. That's what makes her so dangerous to someone like Meghan. Jamie lives the empowerment Meghan markets. And when you're in a room with someone like that, someone who's walked through actual rejection, real struggle, and still managed to build an empire without creating enemies or spectacle, you feel it. Meghan felt it. That tension wasn't about a petty disagreement. It was about being seen. Not the version you want people to see, the real one underneath. And Meghan knew Jamie saw her. That's what made the laugh sting. Behind that laugh was a woman who's been underestimated, ignored, and dismissed, just like Meghan claims to have been. But Jamie didn't come out the other side with a list of people to blame. She came out with $1 billion business and a legacy rooted in sincerity. Meghan's been calling herself a disruptor. Jamie is one. And let's talk about that podcast. Meghan was supposed to be the empowering guest, the headline draw, but somehow she turned into the cautionary tale. While Jamie spoke with calm clarity, Meghan came across as restless. The more she talked, the more obvious it became that her message wasn't evolving. It was just echoing. Old grievances repackaged as wisdom, emotional turbulence framed as growth. But real growth doesn't keep circling back to who hurt you. It builds beyond it. There was also something off in how Meghan spoke about female empowerment. It always seemed to orbit her. Every story, every lesson somehow came back to her pain, her betrayal, her transformation. It wasn't about collective strength. It was about individual validation. And empowerment, when done right, doesn't need to be center stage. It doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be real. Jamie gets that. Meghan, maybe not so much. The industry is catching on. That's why the phones aren't ringing like they used to. That's why producers are passing. That's why former allies are keeping their distance. It's not personal, it's professional. When you overplay the same narrative, people stop listening. And when someone like Jamie Kern Lima walks into the room unbothered, self-made, and unafraid to call a spade, the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. Meghan didn't lose that room because she was too emotional or too outspoken. She lost it because the act is getting old. And Jamie's laugh didn't just underline that, it put a full stop at the end of the sentence. The harsh truth? Meghan's presence used to command rooms. Now it makes them tense. People aren't sure which version of her they're going to get, the poised, articulate advocate, or the defensive, self-focused narrator of a never-ending struggle. And when unpredictability becomes your brand, people start walking on eggshells, not out of fear, but out of fatigue. Hollywood is shifting, quietly but noticeably. The Sussex fairy tale that once felt fresh and revolutionary now feels like a rerun. Executives aren't excited, they're exhausted. Every new pitch comes with baggage. Every deal is followed by press management. Every creative meeting spirals into control issues. The vibe isn't collaborative, it's cautious. And in an industry where energy moves money, that kind of tension is expensive. Then along comes someone like Jamie Kern Lima. No entourage, no demands, no drama, just a track record that speaks louder than any sob story ever could. She walks into a room and brings stability, not spectacle. That's why people trust her. That's why her podcast launch didn't need PR tricks. Her name alone guaranteed listeners. Not because she's loud, but because she's real. And in today's climate, real is the most marketable thing you can be. Meghan could have learned something in that moment. She could have embraced the fact that not everyone who disagrees with her is out to get her. That maybe being challenged isn't an attack, it's an invitation to grow. But instead, she tried to spin the narrative again. Label Jamie a user. Paint herself as the wronged party. And once again, people saw through it. The laugh was never meant to humiliate, it was a boundary. A clear signal that not every woman will play along with the victimhood script. Jamie wasn't dismissing pain, she was calling out performance. Because when empowerment becomes a costume, someone eventually notices the zipper. And Jamie noticed. Behind the scenes, insiders are talking. Producers who once jumped at the chance to work with Meghan are now saying no without hesitation. Not because she's controversial, but because she's exhausting to manage. The brand is too tightly controlled. Every conversation is a landmine. Every relationship feels transactional. And when the energy around you becomes that heavy, the calls stop coming. It's not that people hate Meghan, it's that they're tired of curated sorrow, tired of vague accusations, tired of her turning every fallout into a more crusade. She doesn't just burn bridges, she detonates them. Then writes a memoir about the ashes. And people are over it. Meanwhile, Jamie just keeps winning. Not loudly, not aggressively, just steadily. Her lifestyle brand sold out in under an hour. Her mentoring sessions are packed, her reputation untouched. She doesn't need a spotlight to feel seen. She's not building a legacy on press releases and palace drama. She's building it on substance, on grace, on grit. Meghan once had the power to shift culture. Now she's struggling to keep attention. And attention is the currency she's always banked on. But if that currency dries up, there's nothing left to prop up the brand. No royal title, no production deal, just noise. Jamie's laugh wasn't a takedown, it was a mirror. And what it reflected was a woman clinging to a narrative the world no longer believes. Meghan can still reinvent herself, but it will take honesty, humility, and a willingness to stop performing and start living. Until then, Jamie Kern Lima will remain what Meghan once promised to be, a woman who empowers without turning it into a production.